So, the incredible thing about my education in mind body medicine and my experience in healing myself from the chronic migraines was that I discovered all these tools that have helped me to process those visibility wound experiences in a way that does not eliminate them from my nervous system, but allows me to soften and melt through the fear so that I can come back into connection with my voice, with my expression, with my genuine, joyful desire to connect with others. Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listener. Today, we're going to talk about something called a visibility wound and what it is, how to recover from it, and let's just start off right there. What is a visibility wound? This is something that virtually every one of us has. Almost, if not every single one of us, has a card catalog of experiences in our memory, in our body, in our nervous system, of times when we allowed ourselves to be seen, we stepped forward, we raised our hand, we spoke our truth, and we experienced some kind of negative response to it. And in that moment, our nervous system formed a learned association between visibility and danger. Our nervous system learned through this experience that allowing ourselves to be seen and heard, stepping forward, was dangerous. And as it formed that imprint, along with that imprint, it formed this reflex to censor ourselves, to silence ourselves, to make ourselves small, or perhaps even to shout louder, but not with our authentic truth, not with our vulnerability, not with our realness, but instead with some kind of protective bluster or mask. This is something that affects all of us, whatever kind of person you are, whether you are a creative who wants to put your work out into the world, an entrepreneur who has a service, an offering, a product, a business that you want to offer to the world, whether you are a healer who has help to offer to the world that you want people to know about. If you are a human being who has a heart, a soul, a bunch of emotions, life experiences, and something to say, and you want to feel seen and understood and connect to other people, which we all do. When we have this thing that this light that wants to project and shine out of us, a lot of the time we also struggle to shine that light or to let it be seen because of these visibility wounds that have instilled in us a reflex to contract around our truth, our vulnerability, uh, our our whatever it is we have to share, to contract around it, to mask it, to hide it, to suppress it, to disguise it. And so there's this struggle that I think we all dance with. And what I'm going to share with you today is just one story. I've plucked one of the many stories that I have. We've all got many of them. I've plucked one of them out of the archives to share with you. And you may see yourself in aspects of this story, even if the details of your story are different. You may recognize certain things about your own stories and your own visibility wounds more clearly just through seeing aspects of your own experience reflected in someone else's. And I'm going to talk about how to move through and heal and work through and process these visibility wounds so that we can share our voice, share our truth, share our heart, our wisdom, our vulnerability, those parts of us that want to be seen and met and make a connection with other people, those things that want to shine through so they can shine a light for other people, so that other people can reconnect with their own heart and center and bring their light out into the world to then shed light for someone else, to open a door for someone else. It's important stuff, and it's possible to process through these imprinting experiences, and it's so very worth it. So that's why I'm going to pluck one of my visibility wound experiences out of the archive so we can lay it out on the table, look at it, learn from it, process through it, and move forward together. Because we're all in this together in some way. So if you choose to come along with me on this trip down memory lane, I'm going to take us back to when I was in the second grade. And this was in the mid 80s. I was born in 77. I'll let you do the math. I was in second grade. I had this second grade teacher who I loved, adored, and worshiped. And I was one of those kids who loved to raise my hand. Maybe you were this kid too. If not, I'm sure you had one or a few of these kids in your class. I was that kid who would like wriggle in my seat, barely able to contain myself with my hand raised. And I loved to participate. I loved to share what was inside of me. I loved to have the correct answer. I really loved to know what the answer was and to get it right and to share it with other people. And I think this came from like most things, a variety of places in me. I think in part it came from an anxious place. I grew up in a largely very loving and supportive home with two parents that I loved and still love. And also, like most homes, things are complex. There's a lot of different things going on. And during those younger years, my mom, who I was incredibly close and attached to, and am still close with, had a lot of just really intense emotional stuff going on during those years. She had lost her mother, to whom she was a primary caretaker, only a year after I was born. And she was a young adult figuring things out. And at times she would have these very intense and sudden emotional swings that were scary to me as a kid. Um, this kind of thing is not unusual. And that doesn't mean it's not intense for a young kid growing up in a home that could at one moment feel calm and safe and warm and fuzzy, and at the next moment suddenly feel like there was a storm going on. Um, I grew up with a wonderful, wonderful grandfather who I was also very close with, who he and my grandmother on that side were survivors of the Holocaust. And so I grew up, sitting at dinners with him and very warm, loving atmosphere, and while also hearing stories about him and our family members that were largely wiped out, uh, and during this horrible war. And just, as a small child and just simply as a human being, growing up in a world where I knew that I had a lot of love and a lot of support, and knew that I was living in a world that is highly unpredictable and can be very scary at times. And, um, there's a lot in life that we can't control. And we all experience this in different ways and in different versions of this. And so there was an aspect to me that was a pretty anxious kid in some ways. And I loved knowing the answer to questions. That was a comfort to me. That was a place I excelled academically. And so that was just a place where I could feel some sense of control and agency and predictability. And it was a great comfort to me to know the answer, to say the answer, and to hear that, I did a good job and got it right. And that offered my nervous system a sense of soothing and um, just like a solidity and anchor. So there was that aspect to why I loved to raise my hand and say the answer. And, then there were other aspects to it too. I think there is just like this beautiful life energy that we all are imbued with as kids and as humans. And it wants to express itself. It wants to share itself through our voice, through our expression, through our presence, through our connection with our peers and our community members. And there was that aspect to it as well. Like I wanted to share my life expression. I wanted to connect with my classmates. Wanted to be seen and heard and to connect with others through doing that. So I loved to raise my hand. I loved to participate. I'd wriggle in my seat. I'm so enthusiastic. And like a little puppy dog, wagging its tail, just so excited to go chase the ball and play with the other dogs. And one day in the second grade, I was raising my hand. I had the answer. I was so excited to say it out loud. And on that particular day, my teacher, who I loved, turned to me and said, "Anna, nobody likes a know-it-all." Whew. All the wind felt like it was suddenly sucked out of my sails in that moment. I felt in the pit of my stomach this nauseous feeling that I would now describe as shame. I felt shocked, like the wind was just knocked out of me. I did not see that coming. I was like, running forward toward the sun, toward the light, doing what I just felt called to do, what felt good. And it was like, I thought I was doing something good. And suddenly I was like I just got whacked out from on the side of my head out of nowhere by this shaming shock. I didn't know that I was doing something bad. And of course, I wasn't doing something bad, but that's what it felt like in that moment. And I just wanted to curl up into a ball and hide. And of course, not raise my hand again for a very long time after that. It was so devastating. And it was, I felt like the stink of shame cast upon me by those words in front of all my friends and peers by the person that we all looked up to, our authority figure. It was a really devastating moment. I don't remember how anyone else in the classroom might have responded to that. I think I dissociated in that moment. I probably went numb because I don't remember anyone else saying anything to me about it. I don't remember how anyone else may or may not have responded to it. I don't remember telling anyone about it, but I certainly held on to that memory clearly. I still remember it today in vivid detail. And it's a memory that bubbles up in me anytime I feel that shame or that fear of stepping forward or of raising my hand or of speaking out loud in front of other people. That memory still comes up because it formed this imprint in my nervous system. And that's why it still feels so fresh, not just as a narrative story, but as a physical experience. And so back then, clearly, I didn't have any tools or knowledge or even frame of reference with which to process this experience. I just felt the impact. I didn't think about it. I experienced the impact of it. I contracted, I retreated, I flinched. I emotionally and physically and mentally flinched. And that flinch hung out in my nervous system. It's not that I never raised my hand in class again after that, but I did so with caution, with hesitation, certainly with less enthusiasm and just unbridled joy and excitement, certainly with less frequency, certainly with more self-consciousness and worry. And as I said, I could feel echoes of that in my experiences as an adult when I felt called to share my creative work, when I felt called to share an idea, in a workplace setting or even in a conversation with friends. That echo of that childhood experience, and, of course, it's only one of many. So just that the echo of that flinch could come up. I might notice it or not notice it, but it was there. And it still is there. This isn't the kind of thing that we can fully eradicate from our nervous system. But when I got into my mid to late 40s, something started to shift for me. And that something was that it's going to sound initially completely unrelated, but I had like a decade of experiencing migraine attacks culminated in this period of chronic migraine for me in my 40s. It happened when I was in grad school studying to become a therapist. I had left my career working in television and previous to that in publishing, and I went to grad school to become a therapist. And during that time, these migraine attacks became so frequent and overpowering, and they just started to take over my entire life and make it very difficult for me to show up for my work, for my studies, for my writing, because I was doing creative writing on the side. And I had to figure out a way through this. And I discovered eventually this whole world of mind-body medicine and learning about the nervous system and how to work with the nervous system and all these incredible tools to help me make friends with my nervous system. And that's when I learned this concept called a, a neural pathway or a learned association, which explained the visibility wound, because the learned neural associations or learned neural pathways are exactly what we're talking about. They're experiences that we have in life when our nervous system is gathering data about the experience, and when it is a negative experience or an experience, something we experience as harmful, the nervous system gathers all this data associated with that experience to try to protect us from having a similar experience in the future. I mean, it's a very adaptive thing. And when it generalizes and kind of goes overboard in its own protective enthusiasm, something like the experience I had in second grade, while my nervous system is trying to protect me from getting shamed by my teacher again, I'm not in the same setting anymore. And that generalized overboard protective mechanism could prevent me from having these positive experiences of sharing something that feels meaningful to me and connecting to other human beings in the process. So the incredible thing about my education in mind-body medicine and my experience in healing myself from the chronic migraines was that I discovered all these tools that have helped me to process those visibility wound experiences in a way that does not eliminate them from my nervous system, but allows me to soften and melt through the fear so that I can come back into connection with my voice, with my expression, with my genuine, joyful desire to connect with others through my expression. And that is something that gives me incredible joy. I mean, it's the reason I have this podcast where I show up every week and connect with you. And I love connecting with you. It's an incredible joy in my life. I love hearing back from you. I love having conversations with you when you reach out to me about something that moved you on the podcast. It's it's a really beautiful, rewarding and enjoyable part of my life. And so I'll briefly summarize some of these tools that I use, that I teach to my clients, that I teach in my workshops and groups, and that continue to help me, because it's not just like a one and done catharsis, it's like an ongoing practice to incorporate into our lives. And I'll summarize these tools as four different types of tools. So one, which is really central to me, is dialoguing with the fear. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you've been hearing me talk about these tools for a while. Maybe something will connect in a new way today. The first tool is dialoguing with fear, because each of our emotions behaves like it's its own person. And so the emotion of fear that's moving through us behaves just like a fearful person, a person who's afraid. So if you can imagine that a friend of yours comes into your space and they're feeling very afraid, and if you treat that friend the way we often reflexively treat our own fear, by trying to shove them out the door and lock them out, or screaming at them, or judging them, chastising them, being harsh with them, ignoring them, trying to stuff them into a closet, right? Doing any of these things to a frightened friend will only exacerbate their fear and will cause them a lot of pain. And in reaction, you know, they're going to behave in ways that become very troublesome to us. They'll either shout and scream at us, or they'll stomp their feet, or they'll shun us, and try to hurt our feelings the way we've hurt theirs. So when we treat our own fear that way, it doesn't get us to a place we want to be. So this dialoguing with fear is a practice that helps us learn how to treat our fear the way we would treat a beloved friend, to sit down with it, to dialogue with it, have a conversation with it, and help it feel seen and heard and safe, which helps our fear to start to relax and soften and get to a place where we can collaborate with it instead of feel like we're at war with it. I love to do this through journaling. It's something that I teach in all my workshops. And if you hang out in my space long enough, you will get an opportunity to practice this with me as well. And I welcome you to join my workshop, which is always available to you at annaholtzman.com/be seen. The second tool is graded exposure. And this is something that, again, I learned from my experience in mind-body medicine. Graded exposure, very, very simply, just means taking one doable step at a time to help and coax our nervous system to start to feel safe with that thing that it has felt afraid of. So when our nervous system has developed this fear association with visibility, we're coaxing and helping our nervous system to take one tiny little step at a time into visibility, relearning a new association that visibility can feel safe and connecting and joyful. It's like teaching a kid who's afraid of getting into the swimming pool how to swim. Just dipping one toe into the water at a time, and then, cheering ourselves on, building positive, safe, enjoyable associations with that thing, with visibility. The fourth tool is self-regulation. This is just helping our nervous system to settle again. So when we approach visibility and we feel that constriction coming into our bodies, into our emotions, just engaging in some sort of self-soothing, whether that's taking a little walk or just tapping ourselves, soothing our bodies with, petting ourselves like we would pet a dog or a cat, or some other form of self-soothing that connects for you. And finally, the fourth is co-regulation. That means getting into resonance with other living human beings who offer you kind reflection, acknowledgement, support, encouragement, loving energy. And if any of this is resonating with you, and if you identify with this experience of the visibility wound and how it can hold you back at times from engaging in the type of self-expression and connection with others, connection with the people you were meant to hang out with, to offer services to relate with, to feel inspired by. If you experience that tension between the fear of visibility and that desire to connect through your work and the things you're passionate about, I invite you to check out my membership group. It's called Seen and Safe, and it is a place where we get to practice all of these 4 tools that I just spoke about in community with other people who are on the same journey with visibility that you are, who want to connect, who want to support, who want to share, who want to encourage each other. And if you're curious about this group and you want to get a little taste of what it could feel like, I invite you to experience my free workshop. It is free to you. It is accessible to you right now. It's called Let Yourself Be Seen. And you can download it by just going to my website, annaholtzman.com/be seen. And I'll be right there to guide you through it. I look forward to connecting with you that way. And please reach out to me and let me know what your experience with the workshop was like. You can send me an email, anna@annaholtzman.com. I personally answer all of my emails, and I love to hear from you. So please reach out. It's been such a pleasure to connect with you here today. I look forward to connecting with you next time. And until then, take care. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.